All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm more excited that you are joining us today to learn a little bit about NC Idea's micro and C grants and about the upcoming fall grant cycle. We have a lot of information to cover. So before we do that, we want to introduce you to some of our team members who will be talking today and who are on the call, even if we're off camera for some of it. I'm Amy Bastian, oversee grants and programs for our startup founders here at NC Idea. Alan?
Hey there, everybody. I'm Alan Younger. I lead our programming here at NC Idea, and I'm glad that you all are with us.
And hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. My name is Lee Blancato. I'm a program manager here on the grants team.
Yeah. And we are thinking of another staff member, Alexis Gant, new to our team, joining us at a point. So you might see her face pop up, but she'll probably definitely be on for the end. All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and get started. This is going to be slide heavy because it's a lot of information that we are sharing with you. Lee has already put in the chat that this information already is online. So if you go to our website, there's an orange bar across the top. You can just click that and you're taken to a resources page, which includes this deck that you're already seeing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share. All right, hopefully you all can see that. All right, and there we have the chat function, the chat function disabled, but you can use the Q&A if you have questions. And we may say if you have a question, oh, we're going to get to that later on in the presentation, but and then we will share responses or responses to any questions that are for kind of public consumption. We'll share that with everyone so you can see that Q&A as well. All right, so we have an hour with you today. So again, thank you for showing up. We know for some of you, maybe a lunch hour. So, oh, hey, Alexis. I kind of gave people a preview, but if you want to quickly say hello.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Alexis Gant. I'm so excited to be joining the team. Sorry that I'm a little tardy to the party. I had to get logged in. But I'm so excited for this info session, and I hope to be a great resource to you all.
Great. Thanks, Alexis. All right. So for today, we're going to very brief introduction to NC Idea. We'll give a micro and seed overview, and we'll go through the timeline for this grant cycle. And then we have some application tips. And while you will learn a lot from the staff at NC Idea, it is always great to hear from someone who's been in your shoes. So we will have Chip Kennedy, a micro and seed grant recipient with Civic Reach on at the end, towards the end of the hour. All right, so this QR code we just wanted to share, it goes to the page that I mentioned earlier that's connected by that orange bar that's at the top of ncidea.org. So again, this deck is already on that resource page, so we won't be sending it out after, and the recording of this webinar will also be posted to this resource page. So we could spend a whole hour just talking about NCID and its background, but we just have a couple minutes to talk a little bit about the organization today. The organization's been around for over 20 years. We're an independent private foundation that supports entrepreneurship in North Carolina. And our overall mission is to help North Carolinians achieve their entrepreneurial potential. So we are meeting individuals typically early in that stage. And while we are a team of 13 and we're based in the Triangle, we do have a statewide mission. So some of our programs outside of the direct grants that we have for entrepreneurs and startups are we also partner with and support organizations across the state, our ecosystem partners. You may have heard about this opportunity from some of those partners. You might be part of an accelerator. You may have attended an event. And maybe that's how you found out about us. So that's a key part of our work, in addition to the direct work we do with startup founders. And again, we are an independent private foundation, and the grants for entrepreneurs, as well as the grants to the ecosystem, and as well as our ecosystem summit, which is every November, are some of the key programs and initiatives that we have. The way that we kind of follow up with our grantees, specifically our micro and seed grantees, to track their impact over time of the 492 grants that we've awarded to 455 companies over the last 20 years. We know that 65% of these companies are still active or have been acquired. We know this through annual survey that we do to our grantees. These companies have created over 5,000 jobs, and they have raised over $1 billion in total funding. Most of that in equity investment, but also that does include some grant funding. And Lee and I had to double check this number because we were surprised for 92 companies that have raised more than $1 million in funding, and 42 companies that have raised more than $5 million in funding. And we did double check it. And this is self-reported data from the companies, as well as occasionally we pull in some other announcements that we might learn about from grantees from a number of years ago about funding they've raised or if they've been acquired. All right, so that was a very brief introduction to NC IDEA. If you want to learn more about our programs, you could just go to ncidea.org. Our marketing team does a great job about sharing stories about our ecosystem partners and our work up around the state outside of our micro and seed grants. But you're joining us today during your lunch hour to learn about micro and seed, so we'll spend the rest of the time talking about these grants. We have our $10,000 micro grant and our $50,000 seed grant. So these are non-dilutive grants. You don't have to pay these back. We don't get equity. And these are for North Carolina founders leading early stage growth-oriented companies and that are demonstrating though early that there could be a clear path to scale, either through raising funding through venture capital or kind of investigating or highlighting or have identified another path that could get them to be a multi-million-dollar company, eventually, ideally a $10 million annual revenue company. So we are industry agnostic, so we support a lot of types of companies with our grants, but all the companies are addressing ideally a large and rapidly growing market opportunity, have some sort of sustainable competitive advantage. For some companies, that might be intellectual properties. For others, that might be trade secrets. For other companies, it may be first mover advantage or just some other competitive advantage that you know about and that you can convey to us in the grant process. And obviously offer some type of unique value proposition to get customers to pay for your product or service. Because we're industry agnostic, we don't have just like a really set defined a description of like, this is exactly what a micro seed company looks like, because you may look different across different industries. But there are a few things that we're looking for. One, because we have a focus on North Carolina companies, obviously the company needs to be headquartered in and conduct a majority of the operations in North Carolina. Now this, some of our founders, their headquarters might be a co-working space, it might be their home. So we're not necessarily talking large offices, but we really want companies or require companies to be based in and growing in North Carolina. Companies don't have to have revenue, but they do need to be registered with the state. It does not have to be North Carolina. It could be Delaware, or if maybe you started a company in Georgia and then you've moved here, it's fine if it's just registered in Georgia, but there also needs to be a federal EIN, a federal tax ID number. And we do have some links on our site if you're not registered yet, or if you don't have a federal EIN. We have some links on our website on that link off the resources page that can take you to those sites to learn more information. Obviously, there have to be founders residing in North Carolina. If you have more than one founder and you are a North Carolina company, you're planning on growing it here, but you have a, say, part-time founder or another founder in another state, that's fine. But again, there has to be a founder residing in North Carolina, and this has to be where you are publicly growing your company. So a lot of the companies that apply are very early, and the way that we look and verify that a company is a North Carolina company is we check your LinkedIn profiles, we check your website, we check your company's social media accounts. So if you have, again, say recently relocated from Georgia, you haven't updated your LinkedIn, go ahead and do that. This is our reviewers will look at it, our staff will look at it. We just want to make sure there isn't information that conflicts with what you put in your application. We get a lot of applications, so we just want to make sure that we can find companies that truly are North Carolina companies. There are some types of companies that are out of scope, either for business model or potential of how large they could be. So we always say visit NC IDEA for a complete list. We update it, but there are some examples first off, our micro and seed grants are for-profit companies. So a not-for-profit is not eligible for our grants. They could be eligible for support from some of our ecosystem partners. So if you want to check out a list of our partners on our website, there could be some organizations near you or operating in the state that could be of help. If there are companies where it would be hard for our 10 or 50K really to make an impact, say maybe a pharmaceutical company where a company really needs millions and millions to even move their company for their business forward, then our grants wouldn't be a fit. And there's some other examples here, but the full list is on our website. All right. So if you are based in North Carolina and you are an eligible company, then you might be deciding which grant is right for me. So a little bit more about micro, and then we'll talk a little bit more about seed. First, with our micro grant, this is $10,000. And so this not only awards the $10,000, but we also have programming. Right now it's 8 weeks. It's not every day, and it's virtual. So we can have participation from founders who are across the state. So founders who have started a company, registered their company, done some work, probably some customer discovery, start to interview potential customers, and then working to demonstrate proof of concept, validate some part of their business. But the founder is really committed to solving this problem, and that's why they started the company. And they believe that they're able to validate and move their company forward a little bit. Eventually, they could be this very, very large company. So for seed, the long-term path possibilities could look the same, but these are companies that are a little bit further ahead. They have some initial traction within their initial target market. So even if that initial target market is kind of niche, they have some initial traction there with the possibility to grow maybe to other markets further down the road. And they have a clear path to use the seed funding, the 50K, to extend their runway by either gaining customers, attracting investment, or having some other way to kind of de-risk that funding path. And then for seed, there does need to be a full-time founder living in North Carolina, working on their business if the grant was to be awarded. So it could be that there's a full-time founder today, which is great, or it could be that the seed grant is the indication that the founding team needs to have a founder go full-time. And that, again, that founder needs to be in North Carolina. And again, on that same path to scale as micro, they are just 6 months to 2 years ahead, typically timeline of where a micro grant recipient is. And then another QR code for you, but we have a chart that kind of compares where a micro company is versus C company for some of these categories. So if you're still deciding which grant is for you, you can scan this QR code. Also, the URL is at the bottom. Or if you go to that fall 2026 grant cycle page, click that orange bar across the top of ncadata.org. The link to this chart is on that page as well. And then this is where I turn it over to Lee for a little bit. As Lee is fiercely answering questions in the Q&A.
All right. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, give me a second. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see that okay? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Sorry, Amy. Hold on. Go. Okay, there we go. Getting into the grant cycle timeline. So to start, we have 2 grant cycles per year in the spring and fall, and micro and seed applications open and close at the same time. So I know there were a couple of questions in the chat around kind of when should I apply? Is now the right time, or should I apply in a future grant cycle? I'm glad folks already know that that is an option. So just as you're building your company and kind of thinking through your stage of development with your company and is now the right time, know that we have or will have a grant cycle 6 months from now. So that's just something to keep in mind. And micro and seed applications do open and close at the same time. So you do need to decide which one to apply for. So as Amy mentioned earlier, we have a grant comparison chart. Definitely recommend that folks take a look at that as they're determining whether to go for micro or seed this grant cycle. For micro, we award 15 grants per cycle. That's 30 a year. And we have awarded 254 grants since we first piloted micro in spring of 2020, of spring of 2018. And really, we established micro because we saw a lot of really promising ideas, really great founders, but they weren't quite competitive for seed yet. So it's our opportunity to engage with founders at an earlier stage, like have them participate in programming, be part of a cohort, and really help them prepare to be seed competitive during a future grant cycle. So since then, since our initial pilot, it's been a full-time program since 2019, and 81 or 31% of our micro grantees since then have at least progressed to the seed semifinal stage, which is what we would consider being seed competitive, and 37 of our micro grantees have been awarded a seed grant in a future grant cycle. Seed is really our flagship program. It's been around since the beginning. We award 6 grants per cycle or 12 a year, and we've awarded 238 seed grants since its inception in 2006. So for this upcoming grant cycle that opens later this month, applications will open on Monday, July 27th. The application portal will be live at 9 a.m. So you can get in, start answering questions, or start moving answers into the portal, and it'll close on Monday, August 24th at 5 p.m. That is a firm deadline. Applications do close at 5 p.m. sharp on the 24th. If there's one thing you take away from this meeting this afternoon is to apply early. So please go ahead and make a note if you are planning to apply this grant cycle, submit your application the Friday before. That way you don't have to worry about any technical issues. If your internet goes out, anything like that, you will have your application submitted since we do have a firm deadline on Monday, August 24th. We will award 15 micro grants in late October, and we'll award 6 seed grants in mid-November. So getting into the timelines a little bit more and what you can expect throughout the application review process. So during the application period, again, all applications will be due by August 24th. For micro, we typically receive between 160 and or like mid 200-ish applications. That number has definitely been increasing as that program grows in popularity. But all applications will be assigned out for review the week of August 24th, and we'll have about a 3-week period to review your applications. Reviewers will give feedback during that period, and by September 25th, you'll hear from us. You'll receive feedback at that stage, and you'll be notified if you are advancing to the finals or not. So everyone will be notified by September 25th. We typically move forward about 25 companies to the final stage, and that is finalist interviews. So finalist interviews will take place the weeks of October 5th and through October 16th. Those are done virtually. Finalists will prepare a 10-minute pitch, and they'll present to the internal NC IDEA team, including Amy and I, and that'll be a 10-minute pitch followed by about 25 minutes of Q&A. From there, we make our final decisions and award 15 grants. We notify all finalists on October 23rd if they are selected. And again, eligible applicants will receive application feedback at both of those stages. So the grant recipient timeline, so once you're awarded the funds, what you can expect. During the month of November, we'll have our kickoff meeting and we'll finalize your grant agreements. So you'll get an introduction into what programming will look like. You'll also meet with us to talk through what you want your budget to be and your milestones during the grant period. Your actual grant period will be December through the following June. So keep that in mind as you are filling out your application. When we ask you about your milestones and your budget in the application, really be thinking of that December through next June timeline, because that's what we'll be looking for as we review your application. Programming will also happen during that time. You will have 2 months of programming from December through February. We also give you your first tranche payment during that programming period, and then your second tranche payment at the end of programming. So you'll get $7,500 first, and then 2 months later, you'll receive your second tranche of $2,500. Okay, with that, Alan, if you want to briefly speak about what to expect in microprogramming, I'll pass it to you.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Thank you very much, Lee. So as a matter of fact, the programming for our current cohort is wrapping up over the next couple of weeks, and we want to make sure that not only are our grantees receiving the capital that they need to invest in their companies, but they get the technical assistance that they need moving forward. So we have an opportunity for those who are grantees in the micro program to participate in group programming sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays, like Lee had described. And those sessions will focus on customer discovery. We'll also have fireside chats with previous grantees, and we'll also focus on funding and fundraising. And we also have something called Mentor Madness, which is an opportunity. It's kind of like speed dating. It's an opportunity for our grantees to meet with a variety of people who can help them in various ways. And we enjoy that. In addition to those opportunities, the grantees will have opportunities to meet directly with staff and help them to who is desirous in helping them to advance their companies. So the programming aspect gives opportunities for grantees to be successful and prepare for their opportunities to work directly with customers to make sure that they can support their growth of their companies by them providing the services that they actually need. And that's all I'll say at this point, Lee.
Great. Thank you so much, Alan.
Sure.
All right. So that was micro. So now getting into the seed application timeline. So there's one additional stage to seed, the semifinalist stage. So again, similar to micro, applications will close on August 24th. Applications will be assigned out to review, and we will notify all applicants whether they're advancing or not on September 18th. We typically advance around 22 companies to the semifinalist stage. At that point, our semifinalist companies will have 10 days to update their application. So at the semifinalist stage, we increase the character counts a little bit on the questions. You also then have access to your reviewer feedback. So you're able to expand a little bit more on some of the questions. You're also able to address reviewer feedback and maybe include additional updates that you want to at that stage. Following the submission of your semifinalist application on September 28th, you will then participate in interviews and due diligence. So you will be assigned a graduate associate who will conduct interviews with you and references that you submit. So that will happen between September 29th and October 20th. From there, we pick our 12 finalists. Everyone will be notified on October 23rd. And then we do pitch prep with our finalists, and they will ultimately present in person in Durham on November 6th. So if you're interested in applying for SEED, just make sure you're available on November 6th for that in-person pitch, as it is required as part of the grant process. It's a 10-minute pitch followed by about 15 minutes of Q&A in front of the NC IDEA team and our team of reviewers, who we'll talk about a little bit more in just a minute. And then we will notify our 6 winners on November 11th. So what to expect if you are a grant recipient. During the month of December, we'll finalize your grant agreement. So you'll meet one-on-one with Amy and I to go through what your budget will be and your milestones for the grant period. A little bit differently from micro. Micro, your grant period is set, as is your payment timeline. As a seed grant recipient, you really have more say over when you want the funds and kind of how you want those funds paid. So it is paid over 4 payments, but you can really decide the length in between those payments and really what you want that timeline to be. So typically between December and January, we'll disperse your first payment to you. And then kind of depending on what you decide you want your grant schedule to be, it could be a 6-month grant period or a 10-month grant period. So just something to keep in mind again, as you're filling out the application, really be thinking kind of between December through next June or next fall. That would be your grant period. So make sure that your budget and your milestones really fit within that schedule. Okay, and with that, I'm going to give Amy a second to stop answering questions and come back online, hopefully share her screen a little bit more delicately than I did.
Thank you, Lee. Yes, I did not get to all the questions, but I did wrap everything up that I was working on. All right, so let me share my screen again. Oh, that is not the right slide. There we go. Okay. So we will talk a little bit about micro and seed application tips. And I think a lot of what we're going to talk about next really applies to any grant that you're going to be applying to. So if you have applied to other grants, there's probably no surprises here. But also, if you haven't and you're thinking of applying to other grants in addition to the NCADA grants, or if you realize NCADA grants aren't a fit for you or aren't fit for you now, a lot of these tips and suggestions are you can take for other opportunities. So first off, we know our applications take time to fill out. Yes, you absolutely can rush it, but a competitive application, we say usually takes 10 plus hours to complete, and that's for micro and seed. This includes revisions, receiving feedback. It doesn't mean, how long it takes for you to get your final answers into our application portal, but giving yourself time to really think about your business, read the application templates, think about which grant to apply for. What we ask for, you can almost think typically it's almost like a business plan, but in a grant application form. We just ask about the founders, your team, any supporting communities that you're a part of, the problem you're looking to solve. We ask about your customer discovery. And obviously, because it's a grant, we ask about the impact of our 10K or the 50K for micro or seed and the milestones and use of funds that would be tied to that. So that every question we ask is important because we often get asked, what's the most important question? That we look at all of your answers in a whole. The companies that apply to micro and seed are early stage, so some have strengths, some have areas where not only will the funding be really important or impactful, but also the NCIDA network. So we really do look at the application as a whole for a company. And then we do recommend reviewing the application template as soon as possible. The application templates also include the character counts, and those are including spaces. So we do have restricted character counts, and also mention that if you have applied to micro in the past, the character counts for some of the fields are a little bit shorter this time. So I just wanted to point that out. And also when you're thinking about the grant, because we do have this restricted character count, you can only tell us so much, that we do ask about a lot of parts of your business. When you're not going to be able to tell us everything about you, your idea, your competition initially. So both micro and seed, as Lee just covered, have different stages. So the initial application, nobody gets a grant from the initial application. So your goal for this is to really progress to the next round. So for interview stage for micro or the semifinalist stage for seed. So just give us enough information clearly in a compelling fashion to make us want to learn more. And we are lucky enough to know that we have funding to have future rounds for micro and seed. This is something that we're aware of, our reviewers aware of. So we're really looking for the companies this fall that are the most competitive and have a compelling case that they're ready to take the 10 or 50K to move their business forward to the next stage, versus maybe 6 months from now or a year from now, because we know we'll have these future cycles of micro and seed. So we're looking to understand that there's a capable team, and that's, again, you might be a solo part-time founder who's applying to micro, but we also want to know, do you have any informal advisors, maybe other founders that you're talking to, and what the supporting communities are that you are starting to be a part of and get support from. It may be, again, a peer founder group, could be online. You could have maybe going through the RAP, the Ride Accelerator program. Maybe you're getting connected into Mountain BizWorks or Venture Asheville in the western part of the state, or you're part of CIE in Wilmington. So we just want to know about your supporting communities and that you're really committed to building a scalable company and you're really trying to figure out how to solve this problem. It's not uncommon that we meet founders who are working on a number of different ideas, and then we get asked, can I apply for multiple companies in a single cycle? And what we're looking for are founders who are really committed to solving a specific problem right now, really focused. Maybe there are other ideas in the past but there's something about solving this problem that they are fully committed to and that we want to be part of that early stage journey. And that there's recent momentum and then traction for seed. We've already talked about that a little bit, but this is more than companies who founders who've just had an idea. This is founders who've had the idea and have found some way to move their company forward. So reviewers, one of the things we onboard reviewers and we give them the training and then we work with them. They're really looking to assess the impact of the grant on the company's goals during the grant period. Again, kind of the timing. So we really want to understand if the programming for micro and NC Idea will help a company achieve certain goals and move the business forward. It's one of the things that might be different versus other grants. Both micro and seed are business grants. They're not research grants. You might be doing research and moving your company forward that way. Maybe you've applied for government grants or you have some other time or resources for the research. Micro and seed are really helping move elements of the business forward. And we want to be clear on what milestones over the grant period that you'll be tracking and why is now the right time versus next spring or next fall. So we talk a lot about reviewers, and so you might want to know who reviews grants. So NCIDS staff, all of us, we all review grants, both micro and seed. It's a busy fall and spring for us. Lee had mentioned how our graduate associates perform due diligence for seed, so they also review at all stages of the seed cycle. And then we have volunteer reviewers from across the state. These are ecosystem partners, entrepreneurs. We love to get our former grantees reviewing if they have time, our ecosystem partners, and just other subject matter experts. Everyone is vetted, everyone signs confidentiality agreements, and they're asked to disclose conflicts of interest. So reviewers will give feedback. Not only will they have a rubric scoring a few categories, just so you have some thought, some insight into their thinking, but they will give written feedback for every eligible company. And just like we're doing an info session for you, Lee does info sessions for our reviewers. So we instruct them to be constructive and provide feedback that's actually actionable. So if whether you move ahead or not, you have some sense of what would make your either application in the next phase more competitive, or if you were to apply again 6 months or year or later on, what you could be working on. Every eligible applicant that gets reviewer feedback will hear from multiple reviewers. And especially if you progress in the seed cycle, you hear from a lot of reviewers. Reviewers don't always agree. They just may focus on different parts of your business. So just be open to their feedback. But again, know that everybody's coming with their own personal experience and kind of knowledge and insight. So we don't, as a group, discuss the feedback and just give one, approved upon piece of feedback. They're individuals' responses. And our reviewers, just looking for founders, to be honest. Sometimes if you come from a sales or marketing background, this is not marketing material. Again, this is your business plan. So we definitely want to hear what's strong about your business, what you're really excited about, but also other areas that maybe the NCID network or microprogramming could help with, or just that the company's just not as far along in that area. Again, the application's not an extended sales pitch. For reapplicants, which is very common, especially for seed, 45% of applicants each cycle have applied to microseed in the past. There's a section that asks for what's changed since your last application, and that is very important. Every reviewer, and Alexis, I know this will be her first cycle reviewing with us, but she'll learn this soon, will come across an application and go, okay, not this cycle. They're just not quite competitive enough. Oh, but I hope I see them in the future. And then when we do see them in the future, it's not a negative for reviewers if someone applied in the past but didn't get the grant, or maybe progressed but didn't progress all the way. For us, we're really excited to hear what's changed. Maybe they were talking about a pilot, and so maybe they have some data from that pilot. So just know for us, we get really excited when a company has progressed, and maybe now they are competitive to move forward, where in the past they were just a little too early. So I ask you to be specific. There's some sections where we ask for business metrics. We want to hear real business metrics for your business, not proxy metrics. AI is really great at giving out proxy metrics or theoretical. If we ask for certain metrics or ones that really do give some sense for engagement for your product or service or revenue, AI is really great for the companies that don't have that to say, okay, you asked for this, but maybe we should give you these other metrics. That's not what we're looking for. If you don't have the data that we're asking for, that's fine. Just let us know where you are. If you want to include market research, customer discovery insights, learning from other professional experience, that's great. We just really want to be clear on the work that's been done, and you don't need to write more than you need to. Speaking of AI, we have definitely seen the impact of AI on our applications. Really, with Micro has really stood out. We understand that you're probably going to use it for getting feedback, research, industry analysis, so on. That's fine. Maybe for a starting point for a specific question that you just weren't sure how to answer. But AI tools cannot fill out a competitive application. If you are starting your business, AI is not going to know what you have done, be able to describe that, what you just did yesterday, the call that you had this morning, the progress you've made on your product in the last 24 hours. So we want to understand where you are and not a theoretical, if I created a company, what could that company look like? We really want to understand where your company is. So it can be clear and concise, those character count, the limitations that we have, that is not an invitation to write up to 1,500 characters or 1,000. If you need to, that's fine. But if you're able to answer the question in less characters than that, that's also great. And then one of the things we really want to stress is having others review your application before submitting. That is one of the, besides getting started early and putting your thoughts down, getting feedback is one of our top recommendations. You're very close to your idea. You understand it, and you may have talked to people about it, but it's maybe the first time that you are answering questions about your business in 1,000 or 1,500 characters or fewer. So hearing from others about what was clear, what wasn't, is really important. So that is one of the top things we recommend. If you are thinking of applying, and you maybe have someone in mind of who could give you that type of helpful feedback, I would reach out to them today to say, if I get you, a draft application in a couple weeks on this day, and could you get me back some feedback within 48 hours, within a few days? Just keep in mind, if you ask someone for feedback, but you don't give them time to give you feedback, then their feedback is going to be rushed and you're not going to have time to really think about it and incorporate it for any updates. Then, just like I said, for general application tips, not really specific to NC IDEA, but we do want to stress, I think Lee covered this earlier too, about not waiting until the last minute to submit. It can be a stress on you, it can be a stress on us, and we can't extend it past 5 p.m. And then watching for spell or grammar errors. We know that there might be some that get through, that just might get missed. That's fine, but with the tools, I can give you feedback on this. If an application has a lot of spelling or grammar errors, it's really distracting. It speaks to a rushed application. It can take the reviewer out of the experience. And if you're working in the template, the doc version of the application template, that can't be uploaded. So you will have to put that information into our online portal. Just giving yourself time to make sure that when you're putting that information in, everything pastes. It doesn't paste twice, so it's not repeating itself. So just giving yourself that time to make sure that your draft information comes over correctly when you're putting it into the online portal. Saving the online application often doesn't hurt to do it as much as you remember to. And then just if you're working with a team member, or if you're working on a tablet versus a computer, just not being logged in at the same time so that information doesn't overwrite what someone else is doing or what's on a different version on a different device. So for next steps, thinking about applying, definitely visit ncidea.org, click on that orange bar across the top, go to that resources page, look through everything. We do have virtual office hours that are starting in 2 weeks, really. And I think the link is going live today. Link is live now. Great. So these are 15-minute phone calls that Lee, myself, and 2 other staff members have to answer your questions. We can't review your exact application, but we can give you feedback if you're thinking about, just want to talk through how to think about how to answer a question, or maybe you're thinking micro versus seed. Again, the application opens on the 27th and closes at 5 p.m. on August 24th. And that's kind of it before I'm going to invite Chip Kennedy and the other NCIDEA staff to show their faces. And Chip is a microgrant recipient in fall 2024, and then a year later received the Sea Grant. Hey, Chip, and I'm going to stop sharing. And then, yeah, and Alexis and Alan and Lee, if you want to share your videos too. Yeah, hi, Chip.
Hey, Amy. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, you sound great.
Lovely. Well, it's awesome to see so many people on. Just to keep NCID on your toes, I brought a quick presentation if that's helpful, and then can leave the rest of the time for questions.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
Cool. Well, to everyone on the webinar, congratulations on taking this step, sneaking away at lunch, or however you found the time for this. It's really incredible that you're investing in yourselves to take this first step. And I remember being in your shoes not that long ago. So let me give a more formal introduction to who I am. See if I can share my screen here. All right, are we looking at a presentation? Awesome. I'm a founder of Civic Reach. I am located in the Research Triangle. I live in Apex, North Carolina. Civic Reach's office is, and where I am today is in Durham, North Carolina. So let me tell you who I am. My name is Chip. I've always considered myself an incredible optimist. As I've gone through my career in running businesses and being an entrepreneur, I found that I'm a more critical optimist, sort of matching unbridled optimism of the world with a more critical eye of what can be done. My current adventure is as the founder and CEO of Civic Reach, and we are an AI native communication technology for the social safety net. It's a beautiful mission that I'm incredibly proud of, and it's a fantastic business that my team's been working really hard on building with me for years now. In essence, we create not just communication tools, but technology and modernization in general for social safety agencies. That means cities, counties, states, across governments in this country, as well as nonprofits. Any place where there are social workers and caseworkers, we aspire to make their jobs easier and make the process of getting money and benefits and aid to folks in need in this country a whole lot easier than it is now. We are a micro and seed grantee over the last few years, and I'm here not just because I was asked, which I'm very grateful for, but I'm a big fan of NCIDEA. I wasn't just paid to say that, but I genuinely think this is a fantastic program. It does not exist many places. And besides getting a grant to support a business, to feel like you have your home state behind you mattered a lot in our journey. I think Amy covered this a bit, but just a real life example of our journey. This has been years and years in the making. So as far as companies go, it's not real until you write it in your Notes app. I actually looked it up. The Notes app version of Civic Reach, I have a screenshot. It's not even, it was like 3 phones ago, but it was May 2022 when I wrote down on the Notes app, I think there's an idea here. As everyone on this call knows, that idea is very different than what our company does now, but that was the start. It was 2023 where I first bought the domain name. I looked up the receipt this morning, and that's when you know it's real, right? When you've invested the $13 to buy a domain name. That's also that 2024, it was a year later when we first applied to Micro and didn't get it. I didn't do myself the disservice of going through all the feedback from 2 years ago, but I can tell you in general, we were early. We didn't have any customers. We didn't have a plan to make revenue. I think we were pretty big on our mission, but we weren't yet big on how we were going to monetize it. We were an aspiration without a business. That was largely why we didn't get the Micro at that time. We kept working at it. I assembled a team. I was persistent. We got into our first accelerator in 2024 and started bringing on investment beyond grants. So an angel investor joined us, and our team started to come together in September of 2024. We applied to Micro again the next cycle and got it very happily. That Micro grant went directly, almost directly, completely into conferences, which has become our #1 go-to-market for our business. And our first 2 conferences were funded by NCIDEA. I went full-time shortly after that, which is this amazing adventure I get to talk about now. But at the time, you can imagine how scary it is. And I'm sure some of you are either close to that decision or will be in the future. I guess you can ask those stories of my family and what they have to go through for me to go full-time on a startup. And it was worth it. Shortly after we got our first customer, which was $15,000 in revenue, which at the time blew our minds that we could even make money. We went from being told we couldn't even get a micro grant because we didn't have a business model that was baked enough to making money. So clearly we had some sort of business model. Skipping forward across 2025, we became a venture-backed company, and I will throw a million asterisks there because micro grants and seed grants and venture backing, they're two separate things that can work beautifully together, but we are just one type of company. The fact we're venture backed does not mean that the majority of folks on this call need to be. I always like telling folks this and letting folks know it's one of many possibilities of how you get funding. We became a seed grantee in November 2025, which we used to further propel our progress. And now we've hit our 12th customer as of last month and crossed the $500,000 in revenue mark, which we're incredibly proud of. And thank you, Alexis. It's been amazing to see and amazing to be part of a team that's helped me accomplish this. All right, I'm here to give you tips, and you can ask as many questions as you want. One, be super obsessed with a problem. And then I'll give this to any founder or any entrepreneur, and I think a lot of y'all are already in this domain. But having a solution is way less important than understanding the problem you want to solve. And this is true more than ever in the time of AI. I can tell you how many competitors we see in our space almost daily. Folks on LinkedIn saying, hey, I built a company and it looks a lot like ours. And that's just because the cost of building technology or building companies seems a lot lower with AI. The difference between those competitors and us is we don't talk about what we're building nearly as much as we talk about the problem we care to solve. That resonates. That AI hasn't changed that. Whether you consider yourself a business owner, a president, a founder, an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter the term you used. It's the number one advice I'll give to anyone. Care about the problem you're solving, and the solution will follow. 2, learn how to talk to investors. I've actually advised a fair bit of folks one-on-one through the micro and seed process now, which is totally an honor. And I think the number one thing I see is that here in North Carolina, we are so good at loving our company and our mission. We don't all have a lot of experience talking to investors. It is a different lexicon. And to all the investors on the call, I try not to offend you by saying it means you are dumbing things down. You are simplifying your business. You are being way less scientific than you were in your master's program. You are being way less technical than you are talking to engineers. You are making things dead simple, and you are talking in terms of dollars. That was the number one learning I went through to go to micro and to get ready for seed, was learning not how to talk about my business as a mission or as something that's good for the world, or just me as an entrepreneur trying to win a pitch competition, but specifically how to have a numbers type motivational conversation to an investor. 3, kind of reinforces this. Mission-oriented, business-minded. Love what you do, but remember this is a business grant. So think about it like a business. And if you don't feel like you're there yet, go find advisors who can help you. I find them all the time. Obviously practice, and then be honest with yourself and be confident with reviewers. So before you write the application, be honest. Where are you? Are you micro or are you seed? I am always over attributing to how far I think my company will get in the next month. And so I probably applied through seed before I was ready. I know I applied for micro before I was ready. Being honest with yourself will help you, but don't be overly honest in the application in terms of be confident. I'm not saying you ought to lie in the application, but being a founder or an entrepreneur or whatever you call yourself means the outside world sees whatever you tell them they're going to see. And once again, of everyone I've advised through this process, I find that we here in North Carolina often undersell ourselves as entrepreneurs compared to, say, founders I know in New York. So remember, check in with yourself, be honest, find the answers to the questions you have inside and for your business, but then give the most confident version of that in an application like this. You're here. You're starting a business. You should be confident about it. I asked AI to go through my photos and find a picture of me presenting, and it found this one from last year, and then a picture of me in middle school, also presenting a company, which I thought was funny. All right, last tip, don't do this alone. I sometimes get the word that I'm a solo founder. That is a BS venture investor term. That's just not true. Solo founder describes formation of company. It does not describe how things succeed. No one does this alone. Everyone builds with a community. I don't care what type of company you're building. You need help. And for me, I credit my team here, these folks who have gone on this crazy adventure with me, some who are listening in on this call right now, the North Carolinians who joined on, people across the country who have joined the team, advisors, My family, my partners put up with just years of me running a startup and everything that's come with it. I'm sure everyone on this call has a similar community. So remember that they're here to help you, they're here to support you, not just credit them, but let them be part of the journey. And I'll stop sharing there.
Thank you, Chip. And before we get into a question, and then for those on the call, if you have a question for Chip, please put it in the Q&A. Uh, uh, One of the comments, I think this is definitely for you, Chip, is just someone saying thank you for all the hope and just information that is given to business owners and entrepreneurs. So thank you for that. And then one of the questions was about your venture funding, if it was a company, basically a North Carolina VC, or if you were raising money outside of North Carolina.
Great question. So we are venture backed and we have been now for a year and a half. Our investors come from North Carolina and outside of North Carolina. The majority of the dollars we've raised have been outside of North Carolina. In terms of investors, we have about half of them between angels and venture are based in North Carolina. If that gives you a sense of it. For folks who think they should be venture backed, I'd say one, check that. A lot of folks who think they should be venture backed, there's actually a lot other models. They can still be high growth models, but not venture backed models that might suit you better. And then number two, do your research. You would be doing yourself a disservice if you only look at North Carolina investors, and you would be doing yourself a disservice if you ignored North Carolina investors.
And then, Chip, can you talk a little bit more about, well, first of all, thank you for everything you shared. Sometimes I just jump right ahead. You talked about community and not doing this alone. I know that you have also invested in building supporting communities through events that you're running. So can you just talk a little bit about kind of if you maybe don't see a event or community or kind of resources around you as a founder, just kind of how you decided or how those events that you've put on have kind of come about?
Yeah. So when Civic Reach was just getting started before I went full time, I knew it was an idea that I wanted to pursue. I also, to how you asked that question, Amy, I wanted more community around me in general, as part of being a technical founder, being a tech person in the triangle. So I guess 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, started throwing events at first for myself and for a community I wanted to see. And those snowballed into something beautiful in terms of, it was called Triangle Tech Night. Some of you might have attended. We're on hiatus right now, hoping to bring it back. But what it did, almost selfishly, it gave me the ability to just go meet the community I wanted to meet because I didn't see that around me. Now, I don't think the takeaway is that everyone who is missing community in their part of the state needs to go host networking events. But I do think a good takeaway is we often feel community is a barrier because there's a geographic distance between us and a person who might offer advice. I mean, we're here remotely, right? So a lot of you might live in parts of the state that aren't the Research Triangle, and you don't feel like you're surrounded by as much entrepreneurial activity. Whatever the barrier is, define it, and then don't be afraid to be the one that fixes it. Most entrepreneurial events I know are run by founders, like myself. My full-time job is a founder. I don't have much time to do it, but there's a real tight-knit need there. The activities I go to, the advice I seek is always from other founders who have been in my shoes. So similarly, I mean, y'all are starting companies or businesses or starting something because there was a gap. So when it comes to creating community around you, that's a gap. So don't be afraid to solve that for yourself.
And then going back to your mention of VC funding, there's a question about how you felt as a founder giving over control of decisions to others because they invested versus just keeping it with the founding team.
This is a great question. It goes back to, I'm going to assume folks who see their company as something that's high growth and they want it to be a really big company someday, or they want it to be particularly a really big tech company someday. They assume venture funding is correct for you. As you think about that decision, if you haven't made it yet, control is one thing that is wrapped up in becoming a venture-backed company. It means that with success comes a significant reduction in control that only gets smaller over time. That's generally the route it goes. Right now, we are a seed stage company in venture terms, which means we have investors, but we have not seeded a whole lot of control to outside folks. It does mean that we are on the route to continue to be a venture-backed company and to raise more money in the future, which means we will give up more and more control. So at this point, I haven't felt like any of our investors are trying to actively wrestle control from us, but we are almost locked into the type of company where I will always have to have a board. I will always have to have investors, and those investors will take more and more control. And if one investor wants to be controlling, legally and structurally, they'll have that ability over time. This was a conscious choice we made at the beginning of Civic Reach.
And then probably this is probably our last question. A question about incubator programs that you attended or accelerators, and if you have any recommendations for those in the triangle.
This is a good one. Think about what you need and match that to what the accelerator is selling. And I want to use that word specifically. Accelerators are selling you something, even if they're free. NCID is selling you something. I know this is a grant, you're being given money, but they're selling you something. What is the product and is it right for you? Accelerators, it's really important to do this. A lot of founders I know, including me, and previous iterations or previous companies I've been part of, you can waste time, which is your most precious commodity as a person building a business. The accelerator is taking your time and they're giving you back something. Be crystal clear on what that something is. Is it mentorship? Is it resources? Do you really decided you want to be venture backed? And is that accelerator going to be good at getting you closer to that? We mentioned RAP. It's one of the best accelerators in the state. If you want to be venture backed, that's not part of the ethos of RAP. So if that's your one goal, then don't join that accelerator. But if your goal is a different business model, then it could be the perfect accelerator. So really understand what they're selling. And if you don't understand what you're going to get at the end of an accelerator, then either it's the wrong accelerator for you or it's a bad timing for you to apply. And that includes for grant programs. Money is money, but just learn what you're going to get, learn what the product is. And I'd say think about it that way. We were really, really picky at Civic Reach of the accelerators we'd join. We ended up joining one that was specifically for government technology startups. And it was the absolute right move for us because what we needed was content and access. And we found one that was matching our needs.
Great. Thank you, Chip, so much. Really brings us to time. And do you have any final thoughts, Chip? You don't have to, you've shared a lot, but.
Just good luck, everyone. I didn't know how many people were going to be on this call. Seeing, is it more than 150, 130, or I'm sure there's more. That's so inspirational to me. I hope folks don't feel alone. That's really my takeaway. I'm so fortunate to be building where I'm building, but I'm still in North Carolina. I'm part of the North Carolina community. And at any point to folks building a business, it's going to feel lonely because that's sort of baked into building a business. It's baked into being a founder and baked into being an entrepreneur. Know that you were on this call and 134 folks are going through exactly what you're going through right now, and take heart in that and find the mentors and friends that will remind you of that as much as you can.
Thank you so much, Chip. And thanks to all of you who are on the call and thinking about being part of this community or in part of this community and part of the process. Again, I would say go to ncida.org, that orange bar across the top, learn more. We have a lot of resources, including those office hours. And some of you, I think, will be joining us at in-person info sessions across the state. And we look forward to spending time with you over the next 2 weeks. All right. Thank you, everyone, and good luck.